Hey guys, so in this video, we're going to discuss the basic fundamentals of aiming. I've made countless videos on different aim training courses and practice routines to follow to improve your aim, but I've never taken a step back and covered the core aiming principles we all need to know. The idea for this video was inspired by an Overwatch tutorial from Surefour. I was randomly recommended it on YouTube one day, and as I watched his video, it kind of dawned on me that even if a lot of you guys are putting the time in to improve your aim, all that effort's going to waste when you don't have any of the fundamentals down. These are things like knowing where to look as you aim, or how you should be aiming in a certain situation that can't be taught by an aim training map. Don't worry though, because Papa Jarian has your back as always and will teach you everything you need to know. Really quickly, I'm going to throw some timestamps up for the different sections of the video. Feel free to skip around, but each different section will build off the previous one, so I always recommend watching the whole video through. With that being said, let's start with the first thing you need to construct your aiming foundation: a good mouse and sensitivity. For everyone watching on controller, you can skip this part and go straight to the next one. For everyone else though, this is going to be the framework for everything we need to cover. I made a full video on how to find your optimal mouse, so make sure you check that out after. The simple version of that is there are two main things you want to take into account when finding your mouse: your grip style and hand size. A grip style is just the way you hold or grip your mouse, and there are three classifications of it: palm, where your entire palm and fingers rest on the mouse; fingertip, where only your fingertips grip the mouse, so your palm does not touch it at all; and then claw, which is basically anything in between, where some of your palm rests on it, but your fingers curl up in a claw-like shape. I use what's called a relaxed claw grip. After you figure out what your grip style is, you then want to go and measure your hand from the bottom of your palm to the top of your middle finger, and from the left side of your palm to your right side. My hand measures in at around 19 centimeters by 10 centimeters. Finally, with all that information, go to rocketjumpninja.com and find what mouse fits your grip style and hand size. This is exactly how I found my last two mice, including the Final Mouse Air 58 that I've recently been using, and I don't think I'll ever switch off of. The other extremely important thing we need to figure out is our sensitivity. Just like for mice, sensitivity is all preference. There's not one perfect sensitivity for everyone. However, what sensitivity is influenced by is your style of aiming, aka whether you aim with your arm or wrist. Wrist aiming uses the delicate muscles in your wrist to make fast, precise movements. The main benefits are fast reaction times and increased accuracy over small distances, like flicks. On the other hand, arm aiming uses your entire arm to make the primary movements. This allows you to cover far more ground and be more accurate over long distances, like when tracking. What you'll tend to see is that people who are wrist aimers play on high sensitivities because they're confined in how far they can move their wrists, while arm aimers play on low sensitivity because an arm can move much farther than a wrist can. I'm an arm aimer myself, which is why I play on a semi-low sensitivity of 400 DPI and 0.13 in-game sense. To find your perfect sensitivity, I recommend following the PSA method, which, of course, I made a full video guide on, or you can just do trial and error until you find what you'd like. The point of me mentioning all of this about your sensitivity and your mouse is because it's extremely important for the next topic and understanding how aiming works in general. You gotta think of those two things as the foundation of good aim that we're about to build upon. And without optimizing your mouse and sensitivity, the core principles we're about to look at will not help you. So now, let's actually talk about some of the core principles I keep mentioning, beginning with flicks and your hipfire aim. As Surefour says, the most important part of aiming is not how you aim or whether you stop on the target correctly. It's when you decide to click and press your fire button. What this means is for flick aim, you should not be thinking about where your crosshair is to hit a shot. The only thing going through your mind should be whether or not it's the right time to click and pull the trigger. That's why I included the first section. You basically have to trust that you're comfortable with the mouse and sensitivity you're using, so your hand will move on its own, and all you need to do is click. You never want to be thinking about how far you should move your hand or in what direction to move it. As soon as you start looking at where your crosshair is, you start losing time on when you want to click. Surefour gives the example of spotting a target and lining up your initial shot. The right way of aiming for flick shots is seeing the target and telling yourself, I want to click on his head right now. You move your mouse and click, but all you're thinking about is I'm gonna click now. I'm gonna click now. I'm gonna click now. Remember, you're telling your crosshair when to click. Your crosshair does not tell you when to click. The other example Surefour uses is this insane CSGO clip that some of you may have seen before. This is from a player called Hiko at ESL Cologne, and you can see it's one of the most ridiculous flick shots ever. What makes it such a good clip to learn from is if you look at where his crosshair ends up, it's actually behind the target. He technically overshot and went too far, but he still hit the shot because he knew when to click at the right time. He didn't try to wait for his crosshair to be on the guy's head before he clicked and shot. He just moved his mouse, trusting that it was going to be in the spot he needs to when he clicked. So to sum it up, you want to be thinking about when and where you're clicking, rather than where your crosshair is. And by finding a perfect sensitivity and a comfortable mouse, it's helping you be confident that when you do move your mouse to take a shot, it'll be in the right spot when you click. Then what's the point of your crosshair? If aiming is just about moving your mouse and clicking, what purpose does your crosshair serve when it comes to flicks and your hipfire aim? Surefour calls it a measurement tool for how much you have to move your hand and mouse in order to reach the target. You could honestly hit shots without having a crosshair. Obviously, it would be harder because you do not have that visual tool to tell you where the center of your screen is, but I can guarantee you players like Tfue could easily get away without having a crosshair. The whole flick aiming process kind of goes like this. You see your target, use your crosshair to determine how far your hand needs to move to reach it, and then you decide when to click. In game and in actual situations, this whole process happens really fast, as in milliseconds from start to finish. This is also the whole point of aim training and building muscle memory. With enough practice and experience, the hope is that you'll know exactly how far you need to move your crosshair every single time you see a target. In this training drill, with any of the zombies I'm aim training with, I see one of them, I move my mouse and click. See them, move and click. Sometimes I'll overshoot and miss, which tells me I did not click at the right time, and other times I'll undershoot, which means I didn't measure the right amount and never gave myself the time to click. So to wrap up the flick section, if you're going to take anything away from this video, just remember the most important thing is not your aim, it's when to click. Alright, so now let's move on to the other component of your aim, tracking. Tracking is much different than your flick aim, because you always want to be on the target. I guess you could keep flicking onto a target and track that way, but that would be a lot harder and less effective than keeping your crosshair pinned on them the entire time. What's happening when you track is instead of deciding when to click, you're clicking all the time and making tiny micro adjustments to how they move. If we go back and look at that sweet kill I showed at the beginning of the video, you can see I'm doing my best to keep my crosshair on top of the guy flying in the air. What this means is that I'm looking at my crosshair the entire time, and that's what you should be doing too. My biggest tip for tracking is that you should be predicting those micro adjustments your target makes. Think of a flick shot like a reaction shot, and tracking as a prediction shot. If you're tracking someone and you're not predicting their movements, your crosshair will always be one step behind them and never actually on them. And I know some of this might sound confusing, like when should you flick, when should you track, and when should you do both. Really, it's not that hard, and you'll start to understand when to do each as you play more. The easiest scenarios to recognize for when to flick is when you go for a shotgun shot. Anytime you're moving your crosshair quickly onto an opponent and not keeping it on them is when you're flicking. When you need to use an AR and aim down sight, or an SMG and hipfire spray someone repeatedly, then you gotta bring out the tracking aim. The situation where you use both of these together is where you've been tracking a target and they suddenly change directions when you did not expect it. That's when you'll flick and start tracking again. Overall, those are the basic fundamentals of aiming in Fortnite and in any shooter game you play. If you enjoyed the video and it did help you out, be sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and to turn on post notifications. Thank you to everyone using code Jarian. I apologize again for delaying the giveaway, but I finally worked out the issue for getting one of the items, so I promise I will start it soon. Otherwise, that's it from me, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.